So I have about 5:30. Is that right, Don?
Yes, sir.
All right, great. So let me welcome everyone to the San Mateo County Department of Emergency Management meeting of June 16th, 2022. And with that, may I have a roll call, please?
Atherton,
Here.
Belmont,
Davina Hurd present.
thank you. Brisbane. Brisbane. Burlingame,
Ann O'Brien present.
thank you. Colma, Town of Colma,
Diana Colvin, present.
thank you. Daly City. Daly City. East Palo Alto,
Lisa Gaucher, present.
thank you very much. Foster City,
John Freeman present.
thank you. Half Moon Bay. Half Moon Bay. Hillsborough,
Marie Drung, present.
thank you. Menlo Park,
Cecilia Taylor, present.
thank you. Millbrae,
Ann Schneider, present.
thank you. Pacifica,
Sue Vaterlos here.
thank you. Portola Valley. Portola Valley. Redwood City. Redwood City. San Bruno,
Rico Medina, present.
thank you. San Carlos. San Carlos. San Mateo,
Joe Goethals, present.
thank you. South San Francisco. South San Francisco. Woodside. Woodside. And County of San Mateo.
Here.
Supervisor,
Do we have a quorum?
we do have a quorum.
Okay,
This is
great.
Deborah from Half Moon Bay. I'm sitting in for Deborah Penrose.
Oh, very good. I have you shown us in on the record.
And this is John Dugan from San Carlos joining.
Oh, thank you very much. I have you on the record. We have a very high attendance tonight.
Great. So what I'd like to do a couple things. The first is before we take or after we take public comment in the consent agenda items, what I'd like to do is to move the budget. That's our only action item tonight, but to move the budget item right after the consent agenda items. So with that, do we have any public comments? We do not. I do want to recognize former board member Janet Borgens. Thanks for joining us, Janet. Really appreciate it. And so with that, we'll go to the consent agenda items. Can I get a motion to approve both items?
So move.
Second.
Second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Atherton,
Aye.
Belmont,
Aye.
Brisbane, Burlingame. Burlingame. Colma,
Aye.
Daly City, East Palo Alto,
Aye.
Foster City,
Yes.
Half Moon Bay,
Yes,
Hillsborough,
Aye.
Menlo Park,
Yes.
Millbrae,
Aye.
Pacifica,
Aye.
Portola Valley, Redwood City, San Bruno, San Carlos,
Yes.
San Mateo,
Yes.
recalling for Burlingame,
You not hear me?
We hear you, Ann.
Okay.
Is that an aye?
Yes.
Did we miss- Okay.
And recalling for San Bruno.
Okay. I think Rico said aye. I think there may be some connectivity issues. So let's move forward and put Mr. Medina as an aye.
That would be unanimous passage.
Great, thank you so much. That brings us to item 6, which we moved, and that is the action to approve the budget FY 2022, 2023. Mr. Leach.
Thank you, Supervisor Canepa. I'm going to share my screen. This is a short review of the prior budget presentation we gave earlier this year. Go to the next slide. Sorry, it's not cooperating. Here we go. For you tonight for proposed adoption of budget is the fiscal year 22-23 proposed budget. This is 3.2 million and change. Anticipated reserve level at the end of fiscal year 21-22, the current year we're in, is 1.3 million. The budget recommendation for you tonight is to adopt the fiscal year 22-23 emergency services JPA proposed budget, utilizing $410,000 in reserves. That's the end of this proposal.
Great.
Adoption.
Is there anyone who was on the budget committee that would like to speak on this matter? Seeing none, is there a motion to adopt the budget?
So move.
Second.
Is there a second? Oh, excuse me, Ms. Schneider.
Thank you, Supervisor, and thank you to the Budget Committee. We had this before us in April, and I'm all in support of it. The City of Millbrae is in support of it. But given the number of natural disasters that hit Millbrae in the last 7 months alone, I am very nervous about dipping into our reserves. So I can vote for this tonight, but I am afraid. I am afraid that there are a number of things that we are not collectively covering. So I'm always going to be the one voting to keep more money in reserves and to pay a little bit more at the city budget. But that's just my one comment on it. And I also think we haven't done a deep dive of the last 2 or 3 years and the slow moving disasters that we might need to be doing more preparation for. Well, I believe we need to be doing more preparation for. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? You know, I have a question for Mr. Leach. In terms of, you know, the cities and counties responsibility, it looks like in the slide, it says the anticipated reserve level at end of FY 2021-22 is $1.3 million. And I'm always about sort of thinking about future planning. You know, with this decision that we make today, how does that put us in a position with membership dues in the future? Because I think one of the things that I've experienced is that sometimes when it comes to cities or other organizations, you know, a couple years out, they experience a huge bump in terms of the cost they have to pay. Is that going to be a particular issue in regards to budget, maybe 2 to 3 years out? Or how are we positioned financially?
I think everything's positioned pretty consistently year to year. We did have a slight increase this year, Supervisor, of about $91,000, but nowhere near what we anticipated it might be. I think going forward, your concerns are certainly valid. There's obviously always on the horizon increasing staff costs, and this budget supports 4 positions currently. So that's true that is one potential inflator. In terms of the reserve level, Basically, my analysis so far has shown that we get around $400,000, give or take, maybe 4 or 5%, about $400,000 a year, specifically from SFO as their contribution to this JPA. And so in terms of utilizing the reserves, in the past, we've only utilized around 200,000. That's allowed the reserves to swell to about 1.3. And this year, again, we anticipate getting another 400,000 from them going forward. So if the use of reserves around 400,000 was kept flat, I anticipate reserve levels would stay flat at 1.3 million.
All right, thank you. Mr. Freeman?
Yeah, I think it's just important to note that the SFO contribution that Michael just mentioned does not go into the general budget. It goes into that, what we classify as the reserve account. So it's important to note.
Okay, great. And that's great to know. Are there any additional questions? And do we have a motion on the second?
Yes, we have a motion and a second.
Great. Roll call, please.
Atherton,
Yes.
Belmont,
Aye.
Brisbane, Burlingame,
Aye.
thank you. Colma,
Aye.
Daly City,
Daly City, aye.
thank you. East Palo Alto,
Yes.
Foster City,
Yes.
Half Moon Bay,
Yes.
Hillsborough,
Aye.
Menlo Park,
Yes.
Millbrae,
Yes.
Pacifica,
Yes.
Portola Valley, Redwood City, San Bruno.
Yeah.
Got it, gotcha, thank you. San Carlos,
Yes.
San Mateo,
Yes.
South San Francisco, Woodside, County of San Mateo,
Aye.
passes unanimously.
Great. That brings us to presentations, ESC administrative recommendations. Mr. Matei.
Yes, thank you. Before I begin that, I'd like to say a few words about what we're going to do with the reserves and make a recommendation primarily. We've talked about this at the last emergency council meeting. And what I recommend is that we have several meetings with the finance group during the summer and think about a couple things. One, how to deal with the reserves formally. Two is to formally name the group because it's not formally named yet, and develop a policy for future what do we do with the future spending of that money? One of the things I would like to work on, and I think it's important for us to do, is for the reserve money to be used for one of the, what I call the all hazards plan for San Mateo County, which includes earthquakes, tsunamis, plane crashes, flooding, those type of issues. We do not have a very, we don't have any plan. We have a plan, I should say, but they're all scattered all over the place. What I'm saying is we condense them into one plan. We go after a contractor to hire a contractor to do this for us, right? And go back and make sure that this plan is worked on by the cities with the contractors, similar to what we did with the hazardous mitigation plan. Bring those groups back, have a plan, bring it to the council eventually, right? But what I'm looking at is to develop and establish recommendations for the September meeting for you to look at and decide what you want to do with the reserves. But I think it's critical that as a county, we develop a common plan for all these different disasters out there. And there's companies out there that do that. If you look at, for instance, Mendocino County has a very in-depth plan on how to deal with an all hazards type of thing, so do other counties. And I think it'd be wise for us to spend some of our reserve funding getting that done for the 20 cities in the county. But that is something we could deal with at the finance committee during the meetings we're going to call during the summer. But that's just my recommendation for this. We will go, any questions, sir? I'm sorry.
Are there any questions for Mr. Rattay? Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Val.
Supervisor, I'm sorry, my buttons are tired of being hit. Quick comment, and I very much appreciate the gentleman, and I didn't catch his name. His comment worked on by all the cities. That leads into the agenda item I asked to be placed tonight, that for many of us, maybe all of us, we can do something within our cities, but we are impacted by regional agencies and how we can begin to fit in regional agencies into our planning process and our recovery process.
We can answer that question during the, at your.
That agenda item stuck in the middle there. Yeah, that would be great. That would be perfect.
So I'm going to go to the presentations and administrative recommendations. Rose, our administrative assistant, will kind of ask these and answer these if you have any questions. And one is taking of votes and attendance. We need to formalize that process a little bit. Right now, we just put a list out. And so she's developed a form that we can use. I wanted to present it to you folks. So Rose.
Okay. So let's see, can everybody, let me get that screen up. Okay, so can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes. Alrighty. Let me expand this. And are you seeing the sample with links? Or are we seeing?
You're just seeing the document for roll call and.
Oh, okay, good. My computer is a little wonky today. Okay, so I made this form just to help me keep track, but I thought that it would be good. We could keep this in the minutes as just who was here, approval of the agenda, minutes, and any other items that would need approval. We have the date and the cities along with the representatives. It's a very simple form. I'm open to any recommendations to doll it up or simplify it even more if you would like. This would be in addition to any of the minutes that we had, the group would approve. Is there any comment on this?
Ms. Schneider?
Thank you, Supervisor. Just a comment. I love the form. Peninsula Clean Energy uses a form very much like this, but it also includes the alternates. And you may want to go check with theirs because it just helps you and it helps make sure that we're always at quorum.
Okay.
Perfect. And you said it was Clean Energy?
Peninsula Clean Energy. Yeah, they keep both the regular director and the alternate on the same form.
Okay, we can. I can take a look at that.
Thank you.
And then one other item that had been discussed at the finance and admin group meeting was kind of cleaning up and simplifying the minutes for the group. I'm going to bring over the Board of Supervisors and what they do. And so having watched some of the meetings, they have video available where you can just click on the video. It takes you to the item, the proclamation. If I wanted to go see that particular piece, I'd click on the video. And it would come up exactly, hi Suki, exactly where that item in the meeting happened. And so I thought with the minutes, we could do something similar in that I would create a link and I could click on it and it should, and I swear it worked earlier. Click. Okay.
That's all right.
It should bring me to that moment in the meeting. And this is a very, very old meeting. And you'll see it's from last year, almost to the day. And it would take the viewer to that section of the meeting where they could see exactly what happened for as long as that item was discussed. but it would happen right here. So they could see who put a motion forward, second approved, it was unanimous. And again, this was an old meeting, so I just pulled the names off of the old minutes and put it here, but it would be something where every item would have that link. It would take you directly there. So you wouldn't have to read as detailed minutes as I've made them, but also I could make it something simple. I would put a few bullet points. So in the budget discussion, I could pull these bullet points, throw that underneath the budget item. So people would have an idea of what they're looking at. They could click the link, they could hear the discussion, any questions that were raised. And it would just be a much simpler way to present the minutes, but also it would decrease the amount of time that's put into creating these kinds of minutes. Any questions?
I do see Glenn.
Thank you, Supervisor. Thank you so much for creating this form. Actually, I think it's much more work for you to create these hyperlinks. And I just wanted to make a comment that I guess since we're doing virtual, will you be going to the various areas, agenda items, and snipping the video portions of it to create that link? I mean, I know it's a lot of work and it's great. And also, if you can kindly correct the spelling of my name, that would be great. It's 2 N's in Glenn. Thank you.
Oh, I can do that. Absolutely. Actually, the links are not hard to create. When I watch it on YouTube, there is a button that I can click and I can say, hey, I want to share this. It gives me the option to select where I want to start that video. I can just click that button. It says start at 2 minutes and 6 seconds into the video. That link is what I use to create the hyperlink. And then I just put it in the minutes and I save it as a link instead of a bunch of gobbledygook, numbers and letters. So it's actually a lot simpler and easier to pull a few bullet points and add that link. And I will take care of the name as soon as I can.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Behind the scenes, I see it's work on your end, but this basically raises the bar. So I appreciate all your work on this. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Rico?
Thank you, Chair. Just to my friend, Mr. Sylvester, when we met, we did certainly convey that we wanted to make sure that we were not having staff do extra effort or work to streamline and have it simplistic, to have action minutes, not detailed minutes. And staff came back to say this would be of value and benefit to them to have it stamped as such. But we did go through that, and I wanted the board to know that was our concern too, was to have less of detail of the minutes and have the action minutes so we can concentrate on other things that are necessary. Thank you.
Anne? Okay.
You need to unmute. I'm sorry. I can't hear you.
I'm sorry. I said I didn't lower my hand. My apologies.
Okay, great. Is there anything else, Don?
No, I think if we could do it for the next meeting, we just can see what it looks like. And if you like it, we'll continue the process. That would be my recommendation.
Sounds great.
Okay. The next one is the audit. We'll be doing an audit and we're going to use MGO again for the 22-23 audit. That comes out of the your budget, the JPA budget. And I think there's 20, Mr. Leach might be, I think there's like $20,000 in there for the audit, so we can get that completed.
That is correct.
So I just wanted to let you know that was going on.
Don?
Yes, sir.
Who's doing the audit? Remind me again.
It's Messia, Genie and O'Connell, LLP. I think we used them last year. So that's who'll be doing the audit for us.
Okay.
We're on item 4. Mayor Schneider's request. Mayor, if you wish, we kind of put 14 slides together for you to take a look at for the whole group on kind of how we operate, how we work through county and regional issues, and how we receive support from the state. So if that's okay with you, we'll go forth and kind of go.
That's fine. And I want to say to supervisor, so that you know, staff did try to reach out to me. We just had a 7-hour council meeting, high-speed rail, and I'm on a state commission. It was just a week. That's all. So I'm very grateful that you did this, staff. Thank you.
No problem. We just wanted to get some foundation for everybody to look at. Jeff?
So the Department of Emergency Management, we summarized our philosophy, our practices, and how it fits into the model, the global model that we deal with. Slide to advance here, sorry. So we're dealing with a large puzzle of elements. Every city has different needs and requirements. We have to deal with regulations on both the state, federal, as well as local level. So we're constantly piecing together the puzzle of the needs of the different cities, the communities, and our county as a whole. So we always harken back to are you prepared? Is your community prepared? When disaster strikes, it's going to be self-reliance and reliance at the local level, which is going to be that first hours while we are seeking out additional assistance, additional aid, and help to support in cases of large-scale disasters. So the Department of Emergency Management, this is just the list of earlier this year. So we have been taking part in exercises, trainings, various different activities. We have been pursuing different grants, different projects, working on updates, plans. We continue to work in conjunction with our cities and establishing different relationships with our partners, including the Emergency Managers Association that we're very happy to work with because that is our easiest way to work with all of the cities. We continue to work with our partners in law, fire, EMS, supporting all of the different functions, as well as our state partners, Cal Office of Emergency Services, and with FEMA. Our cycle starts with trying to prevent, to minimize the damage that would happen as a result of a disaster, the so-called mitigate phase, where we can do things before the fact to try to minimize the impact of a disaster. We use that to drive our preparedness efforts, where we put together ideas of what we're going to do, how we gather supplies, how we plan for how we would respond, which is when the incident actually happens. And as the incident happens, the Department of Emergency Management, we fall in to support all of those response agencies and to act as that conduit between local agencies and the region and the state. While the response is still taking place, you move into the recovery stage. This is the putting the world back together and making sure that we make whole our community, caring for our cities, our towns, and all of our unincorporated areas. And this moves back into our next portion of planning, where we mitigate, because now we know what happened and what we had to recover from. And we work from there to make sure that when a disaster happens again, we can minimize how it impacts our community. So we make reference to the operational area. The operational area is the entire county. It is all of the jurisdictions, all of the special districts, all of the unincorporated areas are part of the operational area. And this goes into the California SMC law and the NIMS guidelines. California is broken up into 6 regions. We are part of Region 2. And the easy way to think of Region 2 is start at Monterey, go inland 70 miles and north to the Oregon border. The state is broken up into these regions based on hazards being similar in nature. So we have that same type of coastal influence, and yet we still have the wildland in the entirety of coastal region. So the way any type of response, both state standardized emergency management, SAM's law, and under FEMA NIMS, all problems are local. But when a jurisdiction starts to experience problems beyond its capability of dealing with, they reach up to the operational area. The op area in turn can pull from its various cities and try to establish and fill those needs within the operational area. When the operational area starts to feel that they are starting to deplete to the point where they will not be able to provide services as well as deal with the current disaster, that is when they reach up to the region, the fraction of the state, in our case, region 2. Resources can flow down from region to state, to op area to a local jurisdiction. If a region is overwhelmed, they reach out to the state as a whole, where resources can be drawn from anywhere in California and routed through another region to an op area to a local problem. When the state reaches certain thresholds, they extend on to the federal government. And that's when you'll see the involvement of FEMA and federal resources. The system stops at whatever level the problem can be resolved at, because the principle is resolve the problem at the lowest level possible while still making sure we provide for services. So you can think of this as a number of cities fan into an op area. A number of op areas, in our case 16, fan into our region. The regions, the 6 of them, fan into the state, and of course 50 states fan into FEMA. So looking at some of the trainings that we put on in the last year, we've taken part in such operations as the BAYX exercise, which was in February. This was a large-scale exercise involving a number of our fire agencies, as well as the Department of the State Office of Emergency Services and the California National Guard. We annexed onto this an internal exercise where we utilized, with the assistance of some of our city partners, a fire, and then forced that into an evacuation model. We've continued to work on our Zone Haven evacuation tool, and now there are 451 public safety personnel who've been trained on the use of it. On a Bay Area-wide regional, our 12 Bay counties, we took part in the Golden Eagle exercise, which extended across counties from Sonoma to Monterey out to Contra Costa. And this was a 72 hours post-earthquake exercise. During the Golden Eagle, we actually tested some new technologies, our pod runner, portable emergency cell site, ham radios. We used our Salamander accountability tool, and of course, Zone Haven. We've continued to have our on-call duty officer that's always available. We've taken part in large-scale exercises. I was fortunate enough to go on mutual aid to an exercise that was held up in Sonoma County, where agencies from all over Northern California were taking part in an exercise representing a large-scale earthquake with hazardous material and radiological threats. So we continue to take part actively in exercises across our entire region. And to that region, we are thankful that we are part of an urban area security initiative, which encompasses the 12 counties that touch the Bay, plus Monterey, and we take advantage of this UASI in that they provide training and funding opportunities for us to hold trainings, as well as getting in our specialized instructors. We get much of our specialized training from the California Specialized Training Institute, which is a branch of Cal OES. This is where we get training for not just ourselves, but for our regional partners in the operation of emergency operations centers, support logistics, or how to run finances, as well as courses for our first responders. And we utilize our Zone Haven tool continually, in that it is the tool which fire or law can realize the potential threat to a community, utilize the tool to rapidly notify and to reach out to public safety agencies to instruct us in what areas are under impact so that we can make timely and accurate notifications. Utilizing Zone Haven, we're no longer saying from 4th Avenue, go north 3 blocks and then go east to the Bay. No, instead, we're working off the same map. And these maps in Zone Haven are absolutely invaluable. We utilized this tool extensively during the CZU fire, somewhat during the fire in Belmont. We've used it for a number of fires, including the Sign Hill fire in South San Francisco. And the ability to share a map across public safety and to make that same map available to the community to be able to show, yes, this is an impacted area, stay away from it. Or no, you are outside the impacted area, but you are in one of these yellow zones where you should be prepared in case things get worse. So thus our ability to use this as an information sharing tool. And with that, are there any questions?
Ms. Borgens. Yeah.
Nice opportunity.
First of all, let me thank you for allowing me to speak at this. Jeff, could you give me a little breakout as I spoke earlier, I represent the Commission on Disabilities. What organizations have you partnered with to involve the disabled community in a lot of this preparation when it comes to evacuation, when it comes to any type of supplies or help or whatever they may need during the disaster? What organizations have you partnered with?
Okay, our principal partnership is through the County Department of Human Services. Since they are the hub agency there, California legislation now requires that any new plans incorporate into them the access and functional needs, those with special circumstances, into main plans. They're no longer part of an annex. And this is a very positive step. So we are looking at every new plan we make, making sure that we address all of those AFN issues and strengthening our partnership with Human Services Agency and any other organization that wishes to partner with us.
Thank you, Jeff. I knew you had a plan. I just hadn't heard it called out. Thank you very much.
Mr. Fruman?
Yes, thank you. Really quick question. The cycle you mentioned right at the beginning of your presentation, which was very good, by the way, the mitigation, preparation, responding, and recovering, is something that each of us should be going through. That's not limited to just your organization. That's every city should be going through that. So if we experience a localized incident, we should be learning from it in the response and recovery to deal with mitigating for the future on our own, correct?
Thank you, sir. Yes, it applies on all levels. In fact, I think of it in my own circumstance. If I encounter a problem, I solve the problem. I then have to fix whatever the problem caused. I then look at how I can make that problem not be worse in the future. And then I plan ahead if the problem happens again. This is part of why I have plastic pans under my kitchen sink, because I've had the trap leak before. So I had to respond to that. I had to mop up water. I had to then fix the tile under my sink. I then mitigate it by putting the pan under there. And I've got a plan if it leaks again.
And so it is a local issue to start with. And the rest of the organizations up the line that you talked about are simply support organizations, right? I mean, it's our issue to deal with locally.
So yes, it is. All problems are local, but that doesn't mean you're on your own to solve it. It just means that no organization is going to come in and take over from you. You never will lose your sovereignty in any type of emergency. We will bring you assistance, we'll get you resources, but we will not take over. You are allowed to decide how you wish to solve your own problems.
Well, thank you very much. And again, a really nice presentation.
I have to thank Don Matei for putting those slides together.
Ms. Schneider.
Supervisor, I'm going to take up a little bit more time. I don't know if Ms. Hawkins Manuelin would want to go first, because I'm going to take us in a different direction.
Okay, Ms. Hawkins.
Yeah, I'm glad to ask. And forgive me if this is a naive question, because this is my first time joining this group from the city of Atherton. But is there a consistent procedure set up across the cities? Our city has ADAP, which is a volunteer organization, and we use assembly points. Are all the cities in San Mateo County on the city level structured the same? And is there a best practices document as we start to fine tune our own city plans that you guys have available to the cities?
Rather complex. We don't dictate how those plans are put together. On the local level, we provide templates, we try to assist, we help, and certainly all of our public safety agencies have provided information for us that we can use it in our common platform. We would not be able to populate Zone Haven with either our maps or with the recommended locations in it, such things as evacuation areas, assembly points, and such, without the help of our local entities. So we see assistance from every city, town, and special district.
Best practice, is there a best practices document available?
Well, we're trying to get to that with
We're building to that over time. That is part of the consolidated plan that we're trying to put together.
Great. Ms. Hurt.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to uplift the topic of air quality and that of the climate and the thoughts of clean air centers that different regions are putting in place for emergencies when it comes to whether it's wood fire smoke or some terrible fire that we have to endure. I didn't really see much reference to that in any of the slides, and I think we should uplift that regionally, what we do together to find spaces that are, as I said, clean air centers. Also, spare the air monitoring. It seems like these are all things that we too should have on our website that people can directly find out when the skies look the way they do, when there's a fire, and they can get immediate information. So just want to uplift Bay Area Air Quality Management District, the supervisor and the chair and myself and Supervisor Groom are in that space. So we're happy to work with you on implementing that in our own services. Thanks.
If I can answer that question or just give a little more detail. We have been working with the Bay Area Air Quality Management District. We've received, I believe, 90 air cleaners and with filters, and we've distributed approximately 50. If your community would like some of these air filters and cleaners, we'd love to get them to you. The idea is that these would be deployed in clean air centers, which would allow folks to come out of the smoke and to get a little bit of respite. These are then, we provide this information to the Bay Area Air Quality Management District, and they have something online which allows folks to go ahead and identify where they are, and they can take a break in them. Again, feel free to contact Mr. Matei at dmatei@smcgov.org, and we can see about getting you some of these air cleaners as well as the filters.
Thank you for that. I just also want to put out there that there's also $190,000 that's available from the Air District that we should work hard to receive that money and put it to use. That's all. Thank you.
Davina and I both sit on the Bay Area Air Quality Management District Board, and I do think whether it's through this board, we really need to see what we can do to access those funds. I know there are other counties that are moving forward with cooling centers. If it's okay with you, Mr. Matei, I'd like you to engage with Bay Area Air Quality Management District staff, and I think Davina can provide sort of the right contact person on this issue. But I do think it would add a lot of value, and I do think there's a place for it in San Mateo County. I know regionally, other counties are moving forward with these centers. And so on a staff level, hopefully what we can do is you can reach out to them, okay?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Ann Keegren.
Thank you. Actually, my question was similar to a comment just made by the supervisor in regards to cooling centers. Will that be incorporated in the plan so we kind of know where all those are located through the peninsula?
There's actually an extreme weather plan, which is a plan developed by the health department. And it doesn't actually divulge the location of the intended centers because we don't want to create the false impression that a center is available if it has not been fitted with supplies and staffing to operate. So we would be using a combination of social media, our public outreach, our public notices, our SMC alert, to be able to notify our communities when centers were both set up and available. We don't want people going to a center that isn't prepared for them. That would not serve the public well.
And with that, then for the people who do not have the technology or phones, especially our older population, then how do you reach out to them?
We're working on that in the new plans, since we are looking at that as one of the specific needs. How do we communicate with an older population or a population that does not have technology? So far, there's no really one best answer to it, but we're certainly addressing in new plans how we can do that.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And then the other question I had is it possible you can send your presentation to the group? I thought it was a good presentation.
Absolutely. Like I said, I have to extend thanks to Mr. Matei, who put together the slides.
Great. Thank you.
Great. Ann.
Thank you. Thank you, Supervisor. And staff, could you please pull up the slide that showed basically what happens when a disaster hits different levels? And keep in mind that I am a probably 15-year Red Cross disaster volunteer. So I've been through that, worked 6 weeks at the San Bruno gas explosion. So I have worked these disasters, but that slide is where I want to start a jumping off point. And to the rest, to the people who were at the April meeting, you caught me at one of my not best times, but it has been an extremely rough 7 months disaster-wise for the city of Millbrae. All of us have been through the pandemic. All of us went through the smoke. Although I think the smoke was worse here in North County for something that we talked about in the creation of a particulate subcommittee to try to look at why are the particulate pollution getting worse up here. And I think it's really simple. When there's an easterly wind or a northeasterly, and we've got San Bruno Mountain and the coastal mountain, everything backs up into Daly City, Colma, South City, San Bruno, and Millbrae, and farther down, depending on how bad it is on that. But for us, if you could, I'm still hoping to see that slide come up.
Yeah, I'm
Okay, so what happened? We all have our mitigation plans. And to me, when I'm explaining to my council or my city manager, what this committee does is we approve the budget and we pretty much make sure everybody gets their mitigation plans in so that if a disaster happens, we can get our FEMA dollars. Well, I will tell you, I have a neighborhood in Millbrae that has flooded every year for at least 20 years. There is an existing agreement with SFO to maintain a drainage canal that has 2 endangered species, which is the tricky part. And if they don't do their part, we flood. And in November, we flooded very badly with the first of the atmospheric rivers. We flooded badly, which means homes were flooded, cars were destroyed, people's lives were interrupted for weeks on end. Drywall had to be ripped out. All the things that we think of happening in floods in other areas. In November, we had another atmospheric river. It wasn't as bad. And then on December 23rd, we had another atmospheric river that flooded. And then we had another neighborhood on December 23rd where we had loss of life. But again, on December 23rd, a much more significant flood that flooded this entire neighborhood, again, took out brand new cars, again, went all the way up to people's Christmas trees. It's December 23rd, and there are residents afraid right now. Now, Millbrae, we keep our stuff clean. Our culverts are clean, our litter capture devices are clean. It's all documented. We had portable pumping stations there. We had our entire public works staff out on all 3 of those atmospheric rivers. San Francisco Airport did not, nor had they cleaned out their canals for who knows how long. And we go through this every year. So we started a 2-month process trying to get SFO to live up to its contractual requirements. We eventually, with the help of Brian Perkins from Congresswoman Spears, finally cut through the red tape, and maybe SFO will do some kind of canal clearing in August. It's all based on the lifespan of the red-legged frog. I have 2 environmental science degrees. I get it. Now, we also have SFPUC. They are the major landowner in Millbrae. They have wells in Millbrae, which we know nothing about, which can add to land subsidence, which is something with sea level rise and saltwater intrusion and droughts will create more land subsidence. So it's a slow moving disaster. We have Caltrain, which built the overpass or the underpass where we had 2 people die. I believe that it's probably our first 2 people that died by drowning, according to climate change. I know we lost some people to the heat waves a few years ago. It was a Millbrae resident at a Daly City convalescent hospital that died of heat exposure during the heat wave of a couple of years ago. But we've got Caltrain and we've got high-speed rail that are preventing us from doing the hazard mitigation work we need to do for all disaster systems coming through the BART train station. I'm looking through my list. So we've got SESFO, Caltrain, SFPUC, and then on top of that, we have San Mateo Unified High School District that took out the fields, the grass fields in the 2 high schools. One is technically San Bruno. Cappuccino is completely surrounded by Millbrae, and all of its utilities are handled by Millbrae, and it drains into the very neighborhood that flooded 3 times. Mills High School, which is almost on the border of Burlingame, drains into a canal that is shared by Millbrae and Burlingame. That area flooded in December. There were reasons for that, but the regional issue, and all of these are regional partners to a local government's hazardous mitigation plan. And what happened in the October 23rd, 24th, 25th flooding of Millbrae Avenue is there was a call out to Caltrain to close the exits. It did not happen. What happens is I, of course, get phone calls from people of Millbrae and Burlingame whose cars then drove straight into the flooded waters in Millbrae. So I asked for this item to be on the agenda tonight because this slide shows the cities in San Mateo. I get it. Believe me, I understand level 1 disasters, hierarchy and all of that, but we have additional regional players. And how do we coordinate with the regional players? I'm going to give you one more example. Last Thursday, there was an SMC alert that went out. For some reason, we rarely get SMC alerts for Millbrae. I'm sure that is partly our responsibility or with Central County Fire that we are a contractee to. We do not sit on the board of Central County Fire, but it said, hey, we're going to have a controlled burn. Look out Burlingame and Belmont. Well, the fire is at San Andreas Dam with the access through Millbrae, which is the access point to Sawyer Camp Road, which is where everybody parks in Millbrae to use this very well beloved trail. And yet the only alert said, well, maybe the northern cities might feel something. Well, we didn't even get a heads up on that. And that same day, Caltrain started fires from Brisbane to Atherton. And there was not one SMC alert. It burned down fences and sheds. And with the construction of ADUs in our neighborhoods, it could have burned down someone's home. So we have a problem with our regional partners, our regional agencies, and how they fit into the greater scheme of things. Now, as a small city with a small staff, and we had 20 of our public works employees out with COVID in January. And we were so lucky that we did not have atmospheric rivers in January because we wouldn't have handled it. But we have residents who are applying for their 3rd set of insurance. Where do we get help in just the sheer number of times we have to ask for regional partners to pay for the damage they have done to my city and to my residents? And the psychological damage, a neighborhood landing lane that every time it rains, they don't know what to do with their kids. We were ready to evacuate, and yet Zone Haven wasn't ready there. So when we go back to the budget, this is why I'm worried about how we're spending our budget. I am sure my city is not alone. I know with the Caltrain fires, my city was not alone. All of us should be wondering what our regional partners are doing that impact our own planning. We could have the best plans. We can have our canals cleaned out. But if some regional partner hasn't carried their weight, our people will drown. And it is really that simple. Thank you. And I have a list of asks if we're at that point, Supervisor.
Go ask away. We're ready.
Okay. Talking to my city manager with just how overwhelming this is as we fight high-speed rail that wants to destroy a major portion of Millbrae. We would love regional partners to stand with us, to write a letter to SFO saying they need to do their annual drainage canal work. And it's not just Millbrae, because frankly, we are so small fry, and this county has let SFO do anything it wants, any expansion it has wanted. We need help with that. So regional cooperation for that. And I will say to any city, if you ask me, my city, Millbrae, we will support you in your ask for regional bodies, because we are not surviving standing on our own. We would like the county to help us figure out how to loop in these regional partners in disaster planning. Parks, county parks just cut down eucalyptus trees in Unipacera Park. Everybody thinks of that as San Bruno. Well, my house, the house I grew up in, is one house away from Unipacera Park and surrounded by eucalyptus trees. I have a whole neighborhood that is afraid of fire spitting from those trees. We didn't even get a heads up. I'm happy that the work is happening, but where is the communication? There is no trans-agency communication. So I would love this committee to create a goal of improving trans-agency communication. I don't know how that would look. I'm happy to serve on a subcommittee for that. Our third thing is, and I'm really glad that I think I'm no longer mayor, I'm just a lowly councilwoman now, councilwoman and CARB, or California Air Resources Board member Davina Hurt, brought up the Air Resources Board. I'm also very active on SFO Roundtable. The airport turns out huge quantities of microparticulates. We have no air monitoring devices. We have one in San Francisco, one in unincorporated North Fair Oaks, based on old heavy industry. Well, now we have an airport that is coming back, 85% of pre-COVID. We need air monitoring devices here. We don't need to be told, oh, we run a car through there and they do occasional mobile monitoring. We need some air monitoring devices so we have data that we can make plans. And fourth, we need help trying to figure out how to keep going back to FEMA for all, or insurance companies for all of these disasters. I mean, that is 5 or 6 we've had in 6 months. And I'm sure some of the other cities have had their own. I know Half Moon Bay flooded. Both of us were picked up on the TV news, but I feel like we are alone. So between the DEM of the County of San Mateo and the cities of San Mateo, I think we need to insert regional entities, from school districts that are semi-autonomous to SFPUC, SFO. Apparently they pay a big part of our budget, but let's all get on the same page. And it's funny, when we think of plane crashes, we think of gap departures. So we think of the plane crashes in South City and maybe into San Bruno, but I will tell you that 17% of those flights take off over Millbrae at 100 feet over my homes. And if they're having a plane disaster, they're landing in Millbrae or Burlingame, possibly Hillsborough Homes. So we need to be doing more coordination with our regional and with the regional entities. So those are my asks, Supervisor. Thank you. And thank you for putting this on the agenda.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I know staff is diligently taking your notes. I think one thing that really struck me, I think is important, is just the communication piece, right? I mean, for example, Supervisor Horsley and I sit on a committee around tree mitigation in different parks, right? So whether it's, San Bruno Park, Junipero Park, whether it's parks on the coast. And, I think in terms of just communicating that and what the county is doing is critical. And it's duly noted what you said. And forgive me, I have my Warriors sweatshirt on.
That's okay. I'm heading down to our Beats and Brews.
So forgive me for getting, getting a little bit passionate about it, but, just thank you. Ms. Schneider, I think your points are well taken. You add a lot to this committee in terms of, your experience And let's see what we can do. And I think staff is tasked with kind of figuring out, these different items. And so I'm really appreciate it. We create space for you on the agenda, and I'm glad we did. And so
Thank you.
that brings us to preparation fire season tools and preparedness.
Supervisor Canepa, I just wanted to make a comment
Oh,
on,
sorry, Lisa. Go ahead.
yeah, so I just wanted to make sure that, and we have one shoreline, and as you think about agencies and all that we do, we should all be having this conversation. We created one shoreline to help with flooding. So that's a conversation that should come to us as well. Just wanted to make sure that I included that.
Thank you. And Lamita Canal has been added to the one shoreline work. I think we're unique in that. It's complicated. Geography is complicated. It makes it fun, but I am grateful, Lisa, for that.
So the presentation, we like to get going with the presentation because it's going to take us a few minutes as we have to line up what Zone Haven is and what our sand table mapping is for fires. But before that, I think it's important for us to hear from Brian Kelly, who's the San Mateo County Fire Safe Program. So Brian, if you're there, if you can give us a couple minutes of what you do and how you kind of work for everybody, looking out for the general good.
Very good. It'd be my pleasure to do so. To all the members and to the chair, I'm working for the Department of Emergency Management on the basis of a grant that was issued by CAL FIRE through the California Fire Safe Council. It's a fire safe coordinator position. The intention of the position, first of all, this CAL FIRE is desirous of having 48 counties in the state have this position filled this year to work together to coordinate within each county and then regionally as well the activities about reducing wildfire fuels in our state, but primarily in our areas of very high fire hazard severity zones, high fire hazard severity zones, and moderate fire hazard severity zones. Those zones are determined by CAL FIRE every 3 years. We're anticipating a revised map. They map the entire state, and they do it at 30-meter blocks of land, and they evaluate the fuels and hazards in those areas. In San Mateo County, 47% of the acreage in the county is in one of those three hazard zones: moderate, high, or very high. And that's based on the 2018 evaluation. The new evaluation should be coming out in the next month. We can anticipate that more areas in San Mateo County will be included in the high and very high severity zones. Again, that's 47% of the total acreage in the county in those zones. So the efforts, of this program is to try and coordinate with all the activities that are ongoing, the disparate activities for the most part. SFPUC is the largest landholder in San Mateo County. They have a very active wildfire fuel reduction program, as our county parks does. Our Measure K money funds our parks this past year and the coming year with $1 million of money to work on those projects. CAL FIRE works on other projects. Our Resource Conservation District is very active in wildfire fuel reduction, and on, as are cities throughout the county. So what we're trying to do is create it right now, trying to gather information on all those projects so we can provide one repository of the information. The objective is to try and coordinate the activities of the various groups when they're doing their planned wildfire fuel reduction, to see where there's opportunities to connect with each other, to do projects that complement each other, that are not just done abstractly based on the geographical area or the governmental agency that's responsible for those lands. So it's an ambitious project, but it's work that is ongoing, and there needs to be more work done on this project. So it's That's the primary purpose of this position. Again, it's funded, it's through a grant from CAL FIRE, but it also the matching funds from the county, of San Mateo, to fund it as a matching grant to fund it as well. Additionally, the identify what is the greatest hazards, threats, and risks to the community from wildfires. Most of us understand that if you live in a mountainous area, forested area, evacuation can be very, very dangerous, very, very tricky. And you've heard about Zone Haven. You're going to learn more about Zone Haven tonight in the additional presentations that will follow me. Zone Haven is a mapping system that identifies different areas in the county so that we can somewhat streamline the evacuation notification process. But that requires alerting systems, which we have a very robust alerting system. And there'll be more information on that as well, along with Zone Haven. So the objective is to identify when there's a threat to people, whether it's from winter storms and that people need to be moved out of the areas safely, or from wildfire, that we can alert people, alert everybody in the county who is at risk, alert them about the hazard and where they should go, and then have a evacuation routes that are safe, in response to that threat and emergency. So one of the activities that is very high on our list of projects is identify evacuation routes and to identify what wildfire fuel reduction needs to be done to safe those routes, to make those routes safer from escape and evacuation during a wildfire. So there's a significant amount of work to be done to coordinate with everybody. I've been in this position about 3.5 months. So we're making a lot of progress in terms of making contact with all the representatives of the various agencies that are doing the work to try and coordinate the activities. Everybody's welcoming of the opportunity to work together. Right now, with the assistance of Marshall Wilson from our county manager's office, we're developing a map that will be interactive, that will identify where current projects are being done, and hopefully we can expand that to future projects, and then again go back and in those significant projects that have happened in the last 3 to 5 years, that we can identify the activities that occurred, so we can match that and identify for everybody an easy place to go and search their community or an area they're concerned about in the county, and see it on a map, where we can then have a brief description of what project was conducted or what project is planned. And so that was an important ask from a lot of people in the county. So I'll leave it at that. And I thought Mr. Matei would like me to say more.
If there's any questions for folks?
Ms. Morgans?
Thank you. I do have one question. Again, I sit before you representing the Commission on Disabilities for the county. And I heard earlier that you do have agencies at the table that could help you identify that. But my concern, as I have mentioned before, was how we deal with our disabled community and their ability, their mobility, how they are being connected to evacuation plans, the needs of getting them out. Are they dependent on finding outside agencies? Are they supposed to do it? Or do you have a plan where they can reach out to and say, we have X amount of disabled persons in this one particular area, and you have a bus or you have something that can help them evacuate? What is that connection for our disabled community, and how do I link them to that site? I'm not asking you to do it. I'm asking, where is that partnership that I can share?
one of the things that we need to work on is the identification of the various evacuation zones. Who's in that zone? What needs are there? As an example, we've been tasked to assist the town of Portola Valley because they're a ways down the road in trying to develop their plans. And you know, as an example, there's a significant senior housing facility in Portola Valley. There's also several schools. One of them is a boarding school. There are large daycare centers, and there are facilities that care for the ill, the aged and ill. So once we identify where they are, we can work to ensure they have a plan. And then if their plan is we don't have a plan, then our job is trying to help them connect with the social service agencies who are available to assist in those plans. And one thing about evacuation planning is not about all getting out, because sometimes you can't get out. What do you do when you have to stay? And part of the project, this fire safe project, is to work with facilities, homeowners, city facilities, agencies that run care facilities to provide defensible space around their property so that if they have to shelter in place, they can do it safely, which means taking a significant look at what vegetation you have around your property, what wildland fuels are adjacent to the property, and all fire agencies in the county are available to have inspectors come out and review those kinds of, first of all, do advice, helping people with advice as to how to make their community or their home or their facility safe if they have to shelter in place. The idea of utilizing buses, to move people there, examples, hospitals. I spent 40 years in the fire service. We've always had plans. How are we going to evacuate a hospital or a senior care facility, a rest home? And there are ideas. The buses are always identified. Can you get buses? Well, it depends on. You have to have multiple plans, multiple layers of plans. There's one plan we had to come up with. We had to get moving vans identified to help move people who are in beds who can't be put in buses. And so every facility is going to knows their needs, and working with I'm not going to put up just on DEM, but also on the local fire agencies and their help. The people who are providing this rest home or this care home, they're responsible to work with agencies to have a plan that can be effective.
Then I'll add one thing to that then, Mr. Kelly, and that is, as a representative of the Commission on Disabilities, please feel free to reach out to me if there's something that we can do to reach out and educate to our community, because they're not all in facilities. Some of these people are actually living at home.
Right.
So if there's anything I can do to help move that information forward, please feel free to take my information and reach out to me.
We will do that. We do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Sue.
I just have a comment for Janet. We have a volunteer list. Our police department maintains it, of people with disabilities, mental or physical, and people can go on that list so that we do. Obviously it's volunteer because we can't ask people, but it really helps in case of any kind of incident, a flood, or if someone is calling in about an incident. The disabilities list is large, so, and it does help all agencies involved.
Okay, so that's great. Thank you, Sue. To my point, I love the list. My broader conversation is, then what do we do with it? When there is a disaster, what is the plan to move them forward? And that's the next step I'd like to see what we need to do. So thank you, though.
Okay, ready to move on, sir? Okay, so we'll look at the modeling of sandbox. Tony and Jeff will demonstrate how it works and give you an idea how we use this information during a fire or disaster. We're not going to go into the tactical part of it at all, how they fight it, but we'll show you what the programs can do and how we use them.
Good evening, Council and Chair. we just want to share with this program that we use. This is the same program that we use with the commanders around the county in terms of how to prepare for fires and how to fight these fires. It's an all hazard simulation program, and what we're going to do is we're just going to overlay this on the screen, share it with you, and we're going to put it on a side by side with our zone haven evacuation program that Chief Kelly was talking about. So what we'll do is we'll simulate a fire, and we chose a spot that's going to be just east of Interstate 280 on Crystal Springs Road. And we chose that spot as just a spot where people drive through. There's a road going through there right in the middle of the county. And it kind of represents a spot that's in the border of multiple jurisdictions. So you can kind of see how this will play out with multiple jurisdictions being affected by it. And what this software program does, we're going to show you how it'll play out. And this is a fire that we'll put on there that's going to be a situation that's not actually being fought. So this is going to be a fire. It's just going to run. We'll speed it up a little bit, so it'll be in a faster sequence. You can see how it looks. And it kind of gives everybody an idea of what the fire spread will look like, what the rate is, the direction, the intensity. And as we know, it's primarily controlled by the weather, topography, and the fuel, which would be the vegetation and the structures in the area. It's just a fire simulator program, pretty accurate. It's pretty good for conversation pieces, but it's not so accurate that we can put that on a map and say this is exactly what that fire will do, because some of the things, the inputs on these are static, such as the wind direction and wind speed. So for this simulator, we've chosen a wind speed coming from the northwest at about 21 miles an hour, and it'll be pretty constant throughout. And one thing I want to point out too is throughout San Mateo County, every parcel of land has been identified. Is it going to be for a fire response? Is it a local response area or is it a state response area? And then what we have is anything that's next to a state response area is also what they call is a mutual threat zone, or the MTZ. And pretty much most things that are, most areas, such as the 280 corridor and over on the coast as well, has a lot of areas that have that mutual threat zone. So you'll have responses that will come from both your local responding agencies as well as CAL FIRE coming to these. We train on these as the fire department all the time. All the fire departments train. We meet monthly. We talk about these things. So the response is very coordinated, and it's something we do very frequently. So I'm going to slide off the screen here. I'll start the simulator. Jeff Norris will share the screen. And like I said, it'll give us an idea of what it'll look like, and we can have some talking points.
So what you're seeing on your screen now, on the left side is the simulator, and on the right is Zone Haven.
So this is a fire that started in theory right at near the base of the dam by the San Mateo Creek, Crystal Springs Road. And you can see with the wind direction coming from the northwest, this fire here is spreading uphill and with the wind and with the fuel. So pretty rapidly, and like I said, this isn't a fast forward play, so you guys can kind of get a sense of where it's going to go. But pretty quick, you can see how a fire down in Crystal Springs Road, which could have been started from a car fire or any other scenario, on a very standard day of wind patterns. And you can see how quickly it spread up towards the hill, up towards these houses up here, both in the county area and towards Hillsborough and Various on the north side. Also, the fire is spreading a bit towards Lower Crystal Springs Reservoir. So again, this fire would have a response from CAL FIRE. It would Hillsborough Fire, or sorry, Central Fire and San Mateo Consolidated Fire would have many resources on this pretty fast. So in a short amount of time, this left unchecked within about an hour, we can see this is burned up to 24 acres. And what we want to show you is not how the fire would run out of control. So they say most of these fires are going to be handled really rapidly and contained. But should a fire, escape the containment and go on, if you look on the right side of the screen, I want to point out Zone Haven, and that's the other screen that's up there. So what that would look like, maybe slide this over just a little bit, and you can see the zones that have come up. And yeah, and you can see the zones. And what that looks like is these zones are simply as they're highlighted, they come up and it tells us exactly what we were talking about earlier with Chief Kelly. It shows us the number of the population, the number of vehicles that are in the area. So We have the 2 zones lit up from multiple jurisdictions. One's from the San Mateo County side, which is the zone evacuation 001, as well as Hillsborough's evacuation zone 009. And that's cumulative, how many vehicles are on in that area expected during the day versus the night. And what that will do is then we won't take you through it too far, but we could rapidly change the zone status put into a mandatory evacuation zone. And these are different trainings. We'll talk about that a little bit more this evening about how if a fire gets past the containment and the winds blow it to a point where we have to start evacuating zones, this is what it would look like. And it tells us right on there the jurisdictional responsibilities you can see on your screen with Central County Fire, San Mateo County Fire, and we'll also have lots of responses from neighboring jurisdictions as well. So I just kind of want to point out some of the software and technology that we use to prepare ourselves for wildland fires, as well as what to do once the fire is among us and we're using them for evacuation. I'd like to pause right there and see if anybody has any questions or comments.
Are there any questions, comments?
I have one comment, David. I'm sorry.
Yes, go ahead, Jen.
How come there's so many different zones? It looked like Hillsborough, if you go back to that last slide, had a couple different zone numbers.
That's a really good question. So if we can zoom out a little bit, you can take a look at this map. Hundreds of zones throughout the whole county. And the idea behind how these zones came to be is we sat there and took a look and how fire would behave and other threats. So for example, ridge lines will split a zone. Where some of the roads are will split a zone. Going over to the coast side, same idea, but was also, if you look at some of those zones on the coast, real skinny little slivers, and those are primarily designed as tsunami inundation zones. So it's not just for fires, it's any type of hazard. And the idea behind this is as these individual zones, folks will know their zones, who live in those zones. This map is it's just a visual representation of all the data that we have. That the community can also log on to this website, and to find it, all they would just type in Google search is Community Zone Haven, and it's the AWARE site. So there's 2 sides to it. There's the responder site that has a little bit more information that you're looking at right now, and then there's the side that the public can look at and take a look at. So,
is it fair to say that a city could be in multiple zones?
It is, absolutely. So
okay.
If you look at Foster City, for example, you can see there's 4 zones in Foster City. If you look at San Mateo, you can see there's dozens of zones in there. And that was based on each jurisdiction with their fire department and their police department sitting down and deciding how they best want to divide those zones. And very populated, very small streets and such, you'll see the zones actually get smaller as they get more mountainous. If you look at the PUC area, you'll see it's very sparsely populated, so very large zones. And the idea is based on population and the hazards and threats of those populations. So larger, any size zone on the fly could be divided. So we use the example of the SMC zone 1. If we only wanted to evacuate part of that zone, we can on the fly switch it, draw a line wherever we want to in the middle of that zone, and then we can divide that zone into zone 1A and zone B. So this tool was used during the CZU fires and the Sign Hill fires and some other instances as you've heard around. So, and again, we'll get a little bit more into the details of zoning and some of the training we've done with it. But it is it's a very powerful tool that just gets all responders and citizens and everybody drawing from the same point of information. Any other questions?
Marie's iPhone? Marie?
Hold on. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you, Marie.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So I just want to ask the questions regarding this Zone Haven software. Is this a living documents? And the reason I ask is because for some of the zones, there are topography that that it could be on the hills. Even though on the map, it looks like that the Google Maps that it's just the street names. So do you work with the local agencies, police, fire, to make sure that the zone that you created is practice and is applicable to the local residents and the local agency?
Yes, that's a great question. So when this software first came up to make these zones, we did work with each jurisdiction, they're both fire and law enforcement side, emergency managers, to draw up the zones that they thought were the most appropriate for them. And those zones were created with those threats and hazards in mind and concerning the population. So they were created using local jurisdictions input.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Marie. Are there any additional questions? Seeing none, should we move forward?
We can't. You know, if you want us to go through the operational projects, we can do that, but for the sake of cutting the meeting a little bit shorter, we can also send an email out to folks on what we're doing, rather than discuss all of them. It's up to you, Supervisor.
Yeah, I think that would be appropriate. You know, I think in terms of, you know, the agenda, if there are things that we could potentially carry over, that might be warranted in this situation. What do you think, Mr. Matei?
I agree.
Okay.
Anybody has any questions or comments? You know, we can send it to you via email. No problem.
Yeah, why don't you send it to the members? That's great.
Down to council comments and announcements, I believe.
Okay. Are there any council comments and announcements? Don't all raise your hand. Future agenda development, Mr. Matei?
We can take those. You can email me or you or any member of the finance/admin committee. That's, we're going to title that group eventually. That we can take a look at them.
Great.
Any way they want to do it, they can get it to us.
Yeah, maybe what you could do is you could put that out as well.
Okay.
Diana?
Sorry, I have a question back on Zone Haven. Is the consumer portion of Zone Haven in use anywhere? It's supposed to eventually go right down to the citizen's phone and right on your maps through show you exactly where to go. Is any of the citizen side working or just the part for the responders?
Right, that's another good question. So yes, both sides are up and functional, running. Both the responder side, as we call it, the evacuation side, and then the forward side for the public that we call the aware side. So anybody that logs on to Zone Haven, it's not an app, it's web-based, so it could be pulled up on phones, tablets, desktops. It's functional on pretty much any browser, right, whether Chrome or Safari. And you pull it up, and one of the things they'll basically walk you through some real basic steps, and to help you find so you type your address in, they'll tell you what zone you're in, and then it gives you some steps there from there in terms of how do you become alerted and notified during events. So it is live. It has been used multiple times very successfully in this county. Like I said, we're one of the first counties to use it, one of the first counties to actually use it on a live instance, and had a lot of success with it. It's now pretty much spread to Zone Haven. You'll see it all over the Bay Area. I think as we're talking right now, Jeff Norris will pull up on his screen and do a little quick screen share for you. But it is up and running, and our neighbors to the south use it, both Santa Clara and Santa Cruz County. So how works right up to our.
Who gets the word out to the citizens that they're supposed to have Zone Haven? Is that up to the city or the fire department, or who in the cycle of people is the one reaching out to let people know that we all need to know our Zone Haven zone code and have that, available to us as citizens?
So that's been handled at the local level as well as at the county level. So that same message could be echoed multiple times. So for example, in South San Francisco, they have a billboard that they put up, Know Your Zone. It's been, there's been some mailers sent out by the county fire department.
So that same message, it's a newer program. I think it is something that needs to be echoed as much as possible through all the channels as possible. But if anyone else has anything at the table, who else can fill in on that?
2 weeks ago, Brisbane hosted a community outreach event. Last week, 2 weeks, yeah, that was 2 weeks ago. Last week, Pacifica hosted an event. There's an event being hosted by Daly City this coming weekend. It's going to be a major element presented at the Preparedness Day on July 30th at the Event Center in San Mateo. There's been quite a lot of community outreach talking to people of our surrounding counties. Alameda and Contra Costa have partnered in on this system as well. So this is becoming a statewide tool.
Supervisor, I forgot we missed the informational update from the Emergency Managers Association. If they have something to say,
Okay.
get them over. Tina.
Well, thank you, John. Just to kind of reiterate everything. And we've been working on Zone Haven for about 2 years now. So we've done lots of outreach and educational. I'm sorry, I'm not showing my picture at the moment. I've kind of got the slow broadband up here. I'm in a remote location. But just wanted to let everybody know that we've been working diligently with the Department of Emergency Management on our strategic planning for the jurisdictions throughout the county and participating in our training and exercise drills over the course of the last several months. So we've done a lot of work, and Janet, I appreciate your comments as well. I've done a lot of work with our disabilities communities and our access and functional needs as well. So Center of the Independent of Living and our Pacific ADA Center. So I also have been working with DEM and getting all of our public information officers trained up in getting our Zone Haven public education campaigns and outreach going as well. So we have lots of different projects that we're working on. And I think we're down about 3 or 4 plans just in the last 6 months between hazard mitigation and the dam plans and everything else that we've been working on as well. So we've been really working hard on playing catch up from COVID as we've been practicing and exercising with all of our plans. So I always appreciate everybody's time and energy. Love the PowerPoint. Jeff, great job. Tony, Dennis as well. We all meet on a regular basis, and any one of them can attest to the great relationship that we have between DEM and Emergency Managers Association, and appreciate all of your time as elected officials to help support us. Thank you, Supervisor Canepa, for just those quick words. And I will let you guys, I'll get back to watching the Warriors win, we hope. Thank
Looking
you.
good. Looking good. So I guess our next meeting is September 17th, 2022. And with that, I don't know if any other members have any questions. With that, we'll adjourn this meeting. Have a great Thursday night. Thank you so much.
And did you have something?
I did. September 17th on a Saturday.
That's a typographical error. It's September 15th.
15th, yeah.
Thank you, Ann. I didn't want to be alone on the 17th.
Is there a chat there we need to look at? Reading as it's coming through. Terry's email was put up there.